I'm Norman Liss, and the name of the program is The Way to Go. I invite you to join me as we explore places to go and things to do. We're going to explore a form of art that is unusual, different, and actually we're talking about an illusionist, and an internationally known illusionist, but not a magician like Blackstone or Houdini, but an architectural illusionist, and his name is Richard Haas. And Richard Haas does marvelous, marvelous art on the sides of buildings for the most part. And Dick, I'm so glad that you could come here and join me today. We're going to talk about some of the work that's in New York and internationally. But you work on the sides of buildings, and I guess they're your canvas. What is the largest canvas that you ever did?
Well, about 7 years ago, I went to St. Louis, and I was shown a building in the round, four-sided, 11 stories high, a block and a half long, and I think it totaled 120,000 square feet. So over the next 2 years, I had a project that involved that kind of scope.
Doing what to it?
First of all, it had about 1,000 windows. So, we had to find the canvas in that. They were willing to block up as many windows as I felt necessary that was reasonable. And we traded windows. I said I need about 300. They said no way. We ended up kind of down to about 220 windows that were blocked up in places that I had allocated according to my design.
Let's talk specifically about what you do for those who are not familiar with your work, and we'll get to the specifics in a few minutes. Mm-hmm. What do you do? Do you work with existing architectural buildings, or do you need blank walls?
Well, usually the building exists in some form. Very often, as you probably see in any city, including White Plains, buildings have been torn, and there are these sort of party walls that were never meant to be there, that are exposed.
Party walls meaning that they were adjoining another building.
Exactly.
So, okay.
Yeah, and they're kind of sometimes raw brick, sometimes they've been plastered up, or whatever. And these are the things I began to notice throughout New York, first of all, and then throughout the entire United States. And I always felt that these were sort of mistakes that needed somehow to be addressed. And that's kind of how it all began.
And it all began in a building in Soho on Prince and Green Streets. And what happened there?
Well, that building, which is a cast iron building of the type that exists throughout that area, had a party wall that I was describing, and it was one building in from the corner. So I kind of felt like it really needed to be a part of the corner. And there was, in that configuration, there were two remaining windows. There was a small one-story building that had been built in the spot of the former building below. And so what I did is I simply took the front facade, studied it, measured it, and repeated it on the side of the building and incorporated those two windows as part of the design program. And really, I then made it a corner building once more.
And so what we have now in this color photo is what the building looks like today.
And that building is still there. It's taken some wear and tear, but it catches, I think, a lot of people who go by. And, of course, the cat in the window is something.
Yes, I was going to comment on that. The cat in the window, you've added that touch in some of your other buildings. People...
Right. Well, even in the first one, I felt that, there had to be more than just a very kind of rudimentary program of windows. I wanted some play, some change, and I also put air conditioners in, since I noticed almost every building in New York, older ones especially, had air conditioners, so I felt some of that had to go. Some windows were open, some windows were closed, and by chance there happened to be a cat sitting in one of the windows.
They're fun, aren't they? They're a lot of fun to, there's a great sense of humor that you put into that. Does it take a lot of research to come up with what you're doing?
Well, I think probably what got me started was I had already been doing prints of buildings and drawings of buildings and paintings of buildings for some time before I did that first one. And it was really an interest of mine that had been growing tremendously in the late 60s and early 70s. And so I was sort of primed, you might say, to go into another scale.
And what happened when this first building? Because this is really the first public art that you did, isn't it?
That's the first one that hit the streets, as they say, and when it hit, it was quite an amazing experience.
There was this blank wall,
Yes.
and I guess people had been doing other forms of art on walls.
Yes, I had noticed in Soho and in other places that there were these large abstract geometric kinds of murals that had been done for several years, and I found out that they were done actually by an organization in New York called City Walls.
Uh-huh.
And then in contact with the architecture critic of the Times, who was somebody I knew at that time, named Paul Goldberger, I inquired who ran this organization and, could I get in touch with this person, because I had an idea of a different direction to take these wall murals.
Mm-hmm.
And he put me in touch with someone named Doris Friedman, who was the founder and sort of zeitgeist spirit behind this whole movement. And when I took my drawings, what I did is I went around and photographed 3 or 4 different sites in Soho that I thought were possible locations for murals, and then I did overlay drawings on each of them. I took those to her, I laid them out, on the table, much as you just showed. Here's a before, here's an after. Here's another one.
Is that the
here's
process? Is that the process that you start with a photograph of the existing building and then do an overlay on it?
This is one of the ways that I've worked, yes, even to this day. It's not the only way, of course, because things kept changing, but it's a wonderful way to sort of present an idea, and immediately the person gets it. And she did. She said, let's do it. And I said, well, which one? I mean, you can't do all 3. And she said, the biggest one, of course. So that's how we got the prints in green.
So you've done quite a few in New York. Some are still there, and some are not there any longer, because the life of what you do depends on the life of the building, I suppose.
Very much so. It's a little bit like the life of anything out there. I mean, the architects have the same problem. They're kind of counting, remaining soldiers after the battle of many decades.
You, just as a sidelight here, you felt that so strongly that you had this great concept of putting the shadows of buildings no longer there on existing walls.
Right. That's an idea that I think intrigued me almost from the very start. I did those about a year after I did my first wall, and it still intrigues me, and I'm continuing that series as we speak. I worked on one today, actually, as a proposal. Not that it'll necessarily happen, but I've always felt, with all of this work, that it was really as much about loss and preservation and abuse that has happened to our city infrastructure as much as anything else.
I like particularly your idea for the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center.
Well, that was kind of I guess you might say, my signature concept, and certainly the one that I could be accused most of in terms of hubris. That was to take a one-on-one shadow of the Empire State and actually attach it right to the World Trade Center on one tower, and on the other to the Chrysler Building, being the 2 other towers of interest in the city. And there was a canvas that could hold it.
And to coin a phrase, it didn't get off the ground.
No, I never got to David Rockefeller in time, I guess.
Let's talk about your other notable building in New York, and that is also a very interesting one, if I can find it in the book. Why don't you talk about where it is while I locate the illustration?
The other one in
Con Edison.
That project, which is down in the area that I guess we now call South Street Seaport, but when I did it, Seaport hadn't happened yet, was on a building that was actually new. They had torn down several buildings to build this Con Ed station, and they had done it to be quote-unquote sympathetic with the style of buildings around it, but it left a very large blank wall directly adjacent to a rather important monument in the history of architecture called the Brooklyn Bridge. So what I did is I sort of created an arcade that looks through this building and sees the Brooklyn Bridge behind it. And of course it kind of relates to the style of architecture of the buildings on either side, and kind of completes the wall of this rather blank brick facade.
What I like about it is the fact that you see the Brooklyn Bridge in your painting, and you also see the real Brooklyn Bridge towering above the buildings.
If you get to the right spot, that's what'll happen.
Now, I have taken and shown that to many, many people. You just drive around that corner, and suddenly it's there, and it is a revelation. And I get the feeling that there's a tremendous amount of humor in what you do. Do you consider yourself to be a humorist?
Well, I think of it as a byproduct of what I do. I think there are a lot of other things that I'm involved with, but I do, want this to be an accessible and understandable form of public art, one that can be reached by, people who come at it from all different levels and all different backgrounds.
How do we define public art? We've used the term here a couple of times. Isn't all art public?
You could say that to one extent, except that most art is painted in a studio, possibly sold to an individual, possibly eventually to land in a museum, which is a quasi-public space, not really a totally public. I think of public art as something that really exists separated from all of those layers and those impediments, but right out there on the street, accessible to almost anyone.
And when we see art that is in a city, in a street, there's lots of it throughout Westchester. There's lots of it in the Bronx.
There's not enough in Westchester, I think.
Yeah, I suppose in Manhattan there's certainly a lot of sculpture and in many public places. All public art, if it's outdoors?
Well, yes, if it's outdoors and accessible to the public. Not if it's in somebody's backyard hidden away. No, that's not a public art piece. But if it's really accessible to what I would call pedestrian and vehicular traffic of any kind.
Yeah.
Historically, that's really what all art was about in the beginning. They were usually in public, on public buildings, in the main squares, on the temple, in the temple, whatever.
You have any of your work in Westchester County?
I have a humble piece down near where I live in Yonkers, Park Hill area, where I did a playground for our local racket club, along with the help of some of our neighbors and members. And it's something you see if you're driving by very slowly. And
there's something in White Plains, too, but that's not public art.
There's one inside of an office building here in downtown White Plains.
And let's just get to that now for a moment. Now, you not only do the same sort of illusionary art outdoors, you also do it indoors. You do it for corporations, for individuals. Some of those are in public places, but they're indoors, aren't they?
Well, some of those get really quite public, and some of those, as you suggested, remain quite private, even in a person's bedroom. But I would say some of the most public ones are, for instance, the periodical room in the New York Public Library, where I did a series of murals that surround you if you go in there. In the Smithsonian Museum, which is a very large underground space in Washington.
In a lot of places where there are no windows, you kind of create a window, don't you? It's all part of what you do.
Or a door.
Or a door.
Or an outdoor space.
In your original studio in Greenwich Village, you did something in that nature, and I'll find it here somewhere, and maybe we'll take a look at it.
Well, that sort of started me off. That was really the very first piece, before the outdoor piece even, and it happened for a very strange reason. What happened is that I was...
Is that the one at the top or at the bottom of the page there?
You're looking at it at the top.
Top of the page.
And there was a break-in my studio. Somebody came through the wall. They sawed a hole in it. Directly opposite where I put my first mural. And that kind of got me going, as it were. And I said, well, I guess I give them a better door. So I started to paint. And what I painted really was the space a balcony that looked out at what you would actually see if you could break through that brick wall, because I was on the top floor of a building on Green Street. And then I just continued decorating the entire room.
But you're not in that studio anymore, so what happened to that painting?
Well, I had fortunately painted it on a canvas that I stretched over the wall. So when I left that space, I just rolled it up and I put it away.
One of the most interesting things that I think that you've done is something that is in Miami, and let's talk about that a little bit.
Okay, that's the Fontainebleau. Yeah, that was a project that happened, I guess, about 1985. When I was first asked to come down and look at this building, I really kind of balked, and I said, well, this is a problem because they had about 100 windows in that wall.
But just to set the tone for this, the view of the magnificent, dreadful to some people, Fontainebleau Hotel could not be seen when you were driving north. Is that correct?
No, you had a block as you were going on Collins. And, you know, as you probably, anyone who's been to Miami Beach knows Collins Avenue is the great sort of street where all the hotels, Art Deco and later, were built. And then there's a little jog to the left as you go north. And suddenly when you come around, there's the Great Hotel, which is really a spectacular building, in my view. But it's really facing the ocean, so you don't get this great sense of it. But an annex of that hotel to the south had this, not blank wall, this wall with tiny little windows that were addressing nothing but hallways. So I told the client, the owner of the building, I said, well, if you could somehow see it to cover those windows, you'd give me a very nice blank canvas to paint on. And he said, let's do it. Took a while, but he finally came to that conclusion. And that's where I ended up doing what we call the great Arc of Triomphe for that city, and it's a pretty spectacular thing.
And actually, what you've done is created a view of the hotel from a place where it cannot be seen. So you just cut a hole in the building, so to speak.
Well, it's a little more than a hole. It's a very major piece of architecture, really. And it has two standing cardiadids on either side that if they were actually there and lit, they would probably be the largest sculpture south of the Statue of Liberty, along with the fountain on the left.
And it's great because you really see the hotel in right through it.
You see through it. You see it. You have a bullseye to approach day and night. They light it at night.
Oh, they do light it?
Oh, yes. It's a bigger sight at night in a way than during the day.
How does this all happen, actually? What happens in the creation? You have an idea, you create it on paper, get it approved, and then what happens? How does it go from your small painting to this huge canvas?
The first answer is very slowly. and the second answer is only 1 out of 4 get to that point. Mm-hmm. But once everything is in place and the thing is approved and we're rolling, I'll take that preliminary design, which is very small, and I'll scale it up to maybe a ½ inch to a foot, an inch to a foot, architecturally accurate drawing and painting, and give that to painters who are people that I would call journeymen. Very often they're artists, very often they're a combination of artists and commercial artists, but people who have had experience at this kind of thing.
And then they take this and project it, so to speak, onto the large size just by working from the scale.
Yeah, there's a very old technique. It started somewhere around Egypt, maybe before, where they use the grid system or plotting system, and they do a lot of pouncing beforehand.
What does that mean?
Pouncing is where you take brown paper, you scale up the drawing with a camera, and you outline the actual full-scale details on the brown paper, and then you perforate it with little holes. And you can rub that, by rubbing graphite through that brown paper, you can make an outline drawing on a wall.
Oh, so they're working off that. So it's like a pattern that lays out for them.
It's exactly like that. It's like a pattern. They don't do everything, but they do all the intense areas so that, if you had to pounce the whole wall, it would take you too long.
Now, we talked earlier about the fact that not everything that you've done remains, some of it because the buildings are gone. Now, there was one in Times Square that you did, and it's gone, isn't it?
Well, it's sort of recycled, let's say. It went away because they were going to build a building, and then a little thing happened called 1987 through 1994.
What was the building? I'm sure some of our viewers have seen.
It was a nondescript building. Someone said it was a building that was built by a speculator in 1907 to be 23 stories high. He ran out of money at the 8th floor, so he put a tube up the middle to gain his air rights, and it stayed a tube for the next 75 years.
And what did you do about it?
Well, I painted on that tube, which was really a 20-foot by 20-foot by 20-foot piece, about 100 and some feet high, and I did a facsimile of the Times Tower, which was just north of there.
Uh-huh.
So I kind of brought that building back as well.
And you did that when the Times Tower was the Times Tower and not the modern monstrosity that it is today.
It was the modern monstrosity when I did mine. The Times Tower had long left us.
And that was on the Crossroads building, which is just south of Times Square on the south side of 42nd Street,
Exactly.
where the police station, I guess, is now.
Well, that's even gone now.
That's gone too.
Yeah, it's kind of recycled into it's another artwork, one that has kind of come along.
But some of the things that you do, even though they're still there, don't last because the quality of the material. There's one on 42nd Street and where, 11th Avenue or 10th Avenue?
I think it's between 9th and 10th.
Near the exit from the Lincoln Tunnel.
Exactly, right.
And what's happened to that one?
Well, it's still there. It just faded.
Art Deco,
slowly.
as I recall.
Very Art Deco. It was kind of meant to be an emblematic piece that you enter the city with. But it was painted very early in my career when I didn't know as much about the material as I knew later, and so the paint faded. The material I use today, like the one that you saw on the fountain blue, that is with a silicate paint that will last probably the life of that building. So if the building stays, the painting will be there. They can paint it over, of course.
Would you say that your Cincinnati accomplishment is one of your greatest? It certainly is one of the most imaginative, isn't it?
That was another, I'd say, happy accident where the building was shown to me, and it had a lot of windows in it. And I said, well, here's the problem, folks. We've got to get rid of some of those windows because you haven't given me any canvas. And they said, fine, they can deliver that. And I said, keep the windows on the right where there was some nice architectural detail. And
what did you do with it?
Well, what I did is I kind of matched it. There was in the before of that building, they had sort of completed 1/4 of that wall and left the rest kind of blank. Mm-hmm. And so I made the building whole again. But in the middle, I kind of carved a very large, what I call cutaway. And inside there was a very triumphant kind of monument. A monument, surprisingly enough, to Cincinnatus, who didn't have a monument in Cincinnati, strangely enough. And actually, 9 out of 10 people on the street, 99 out of 100, I should say, didn't even know Cincinnatus was a person at one time. But he was an historical figure. He was an emperor, general, rather, a leader of the early Rome. And he had some dates, 500 some BC, when he saved Rome. And he was... Most interestingly, he was George Washington's favorite hero, and that's how it all kind of came about.
What else would you say are some of your prime? I know you did a great in Chicago, an homage to the architects, which is 4 sides of a building.
That one is on 3 sides.
3 sides.
The front had been finished again in the speculation of 1920s, and it was a very tall building, 20-some stories. But 3 sides were exposed. Nothing had been built around. So I finished the building off. But I turned the style around a little bit. I kind of changed it back to what I call a sort of neo-Sullivan style. Sullivan being the great architect of the turn of the century. And I kind of helped create a late Sullivan style.
There's so many that we could talk about. Fort Worth, you've done a lot of work internationally as well. Mm-hmm. Where's the trend now? Of course, economics mean that maybe not as many people are spending money for large things and large buildings at this time, but certainly interiors are an interesting field. Do you consider yourself to be an illusionist? Do you consider yourself to be an architectural painter? How do we describe you?
I would like to say I'm an artist, first of all, because I do a lot of paintings and drawings and prints, continue that. And secondly, that I'm a muralist, and that my murals are really architectural murals more than anything else, but that I'm really in a tradition that, has been about as long as any tradition that exists in terms of painters.
You really invented this medium or this style, didn't you? And nobody did this before you did. There were some people who are doing other things now, but you're a pioneer, aren't you?
I would say I'm a reinventor, because obviously it, has almost at least 2,500, 3,000 years old. The architectural, what we call quadratura painting of the Roman Empire was very common, and in the Renaissance it was revived and very successfully all over Europe. It kind of went on for several hundred years after the Renaissance, and then it died out completely. And I started to see the residue of that when I would travel to Europe. And that's kind of what got me interested in revisiting that idea and seeing how there might be a contemporary application to the American cities. And so, yes, I brought that idea into our time, I think. And there are, as you suggest, hundreds of imitators and imitations of it and derivations of it and, recycling of ideas that I brought out to the table.
And actually, the work that you do is unlimited because, I guess, as unlimited as your imagination is unlimited, and as your sense of humor. You must have this terrible feeling as you walk around and see blank walls that I could do something with that wall. It didn't.